Little gang, this story brings together everything we love. Ancient powers, thrilling battles, more than gorgeous waifus, a great harem to be formed, and most importantly, huge melons. And when I say huge, I really mean enormous. Without further delay, like the video and subscribe to the channel to follow this story. Let's go to the great world of Zan, where mighty beasts ruled everything. The resources of this world belonged entirely to those creatures. This was known as the First Era of Desolation. After thousands of years, several races began to appear. First the race of demons, then the humans, and thus the cultivators began to rise. However, cultivators were greedy and chased every resource of that world. For resources they would do anything, and if they couldn't get them, they destroyed them so others couldn't either. Nowadays, countless sects are spread across the world, and if you want to cultivate, you must join one of them. This world was also called the Second Era of Desolation. We are taken to a huge carnivorous plant that suddenly spat out the human from its mouth, thinking he tasted disgusting. It spat him so hard that he caused an explosion when he hit the ground. And the one who was spat out was Tiwin, a disciple of the Ziyun sect. It seemed he was trying to collect some resource inside the plant, but someone shouted his name saying it was lunchtime. When he turned, he saw Yin waving and saying she had prepared his favorite dish, so he'd better hurry because she was hungry. She placed the food on the table but cleaned him first since Tiwin was covered in slime and saliva from that huge plant. Then the two of them sat down to eat. Our protagonist was one of the disciples responsible for the sect's gardens. In his previous life, he was a guy who loved plants and was completely obsessed with the world of cultivation, but his body was weak. Until one day he kicked the bucket because a truck ran through his house. When he realized it, he was already in another world, exactly like his dreams. He got excited for landing in a cultivation world and started shouting, asking if he could cultivate there, imagining all the glamour of swords, antidotes, and pills. But at the first test he took, he was labeled as trash and told he couldn't cultivate properly. However, his body was special. He had great affinity with fauna and flora. Yin came very close to his face, asking if the food was tasty, and it seemed she was already clinging to the protagonist, rubbing against it. Tiwin just patted her head, saying it was really nice having her around. The girl kept getting closer and closer. Even without being able to cultivate, Tiwin was happy because the days he spent there were peaceful and joyful. A few minutes later, someone called his name. It was Yuya, one of the high-level disciples, saying he would be punished for wasting time, all because he had taken a nap. Yuya used to punish people by putting them over a bonfire, and Yin quickly ran to defend him, provoking the other girl even more. Yuya replied that their duty was to take care of the garden, and if they kept slacking off, she would teach them a lesson. But Yin released all her aura, showing she was powerful too. Yuya, however, vanished and reappeared behind her in a second, slapping the girl's back hard and saying she was just over as Tiwin ending her useless skills. Tiwin ran to rescue Yin, who was already lying on the ground, moaning in pain. Just that slap made her really weak. Tiwin shouted, asking why she had hit so hard. Yuya replied that she was the supervisor of that place and had authority over all disciples. Tiwin just glared at her angrily as she levitated with a sword in hand. Minutes later, Yin was complaining that Yuya was the main disciple of the sect. She was so strong she could defeat several monsters out there. But what annoyed the most was that she came to the gardens only to make them her servants, and she even bullied the others just because she had stronger cultivation. Tiwin said he could help Yin increase her cultivation because he knew where to find some rare herbs. If she really wanted to, she just had to trust him, and everything would be fine. She hugged him tightly, saying it was so good to be able to count on him. But watching everything from above was Yuya, with a very wicked expression. Soon the day began to brighten. We see the great gate of the sect, and Tiwin arriving with his huge backpack. At that moment he was alone in the garden since all disciples were meditating. He began watering the plants. He took out a control talisman from his clothes and placed it on the backpack. The backpack started moving on its own, watering the plants around. Meanwhile, he collected some herbs and noticed some strange purple plants growing. It was exactly the plant he needed, so he carefully removed it. But the moment he did, the sect master appeared right behind him, accompanied by several subordinates. The protagonist froze and began to stutter before him. The master simply raised his finger, summoning his power, and made the protagonist levitate inside a dense aura. He just pointed at him and ordered the subordinates to beat him so hard that he would fly upward. Then he threw Tiwin with a severe impact and the disciples started beating our boy non-stop. He felt unbearable pain, but in the background someone shouted for them to stop, saying if they continued they would completely break Tiwin. And he truly didn't expect that. In the end, the one who would save him would be her. However, Yuya frowned and told the master that she had asked them to eliminate the protagonist but leave his body intact. Tyne didn't understand what that meant and asked what was going on. Then Yuya slowly approached. She explained, laughing, that she had harassed him so many times, but now he had the nerve to steal the herb she wanted so badly, putting all the blame on him. The attacks began to fly again toward the protagonist, and honestly I felt bad for him, you know. From his point of view, he just wanted to hug the sect master, But the situation got way worse. Suddenly, Yuya appeared saying that all of that was a deception. The master asked for an explanation and the girl said she had recorded everything with her magic orb. She screamed that it was a lie, that the other disciple was putting a target on her back and hitting on the sect master, harassing him completely. Yuya realized the master wasn't ready for that argument. Then she threw her sword directly at the protagonist, saying that both she and he would be leaving. The sword flew with impressive precision and held Tyne in midair. That way she was rescuing the protagonist from there. Tyne asked why she was trying to save him. But at that moment the sect master burst in aura, saying his sect wasn't a place where people could just come and go as they pleased. He summoned all his power, creating a giant claw above them. All that power fell to the ground like a burning pillar. And Yuya celebrated, saying the master was truly powerful. And seriously guys, be honest, what do you think of this girl? Because I'm already mad at her. A huge hole formed and the protagonist was there, completely wrecked, while Yuya protected him. But anger grew inside Tyne. Even after receiving a new life, he was simply eliminated like an insect. He swore to himself while blood poured out that if he had one more chance he would destroy all those bastards. Then a kind of ruby began to shine, resonating with his power. At that instant, a voice announced that he had entered the realm of death, and because of that, had unlocked the Prodigy Gardener system. Tyne just smiled, asking why the system had taken so long to show up. The ruby replied that he first needed to enter the realm of death, and that it had arrived at the perfect time. Soon a girl appeared within that power, and he obtained the 100,000 meter Zir demonic seed. The system asked if he wanted to activate all its power. Tyne replied that there was no need to even ask that. The demon seed began to activate, and the girl started to awaken. The system warned that she was waking up. On the other side, Yin was still flirting with the sect master because of the power he possessed. Meanwhile, the protagonist's body, which was being buried, started shining intensely from his chest. The disciples around wondered what that was as a flower began to grow on his chest, emanating great power. Everyone screamed in fear when a huge flower emerged in the middle of the place. The master was terrified upon seeing that power rise. That was called a cosmic phenomenon. He knew exactly what it was. It was at the very least a 10,000-year-old demon. And he explained that demons also divided their cultivation realms, but on scales of thousands and millions of years. Honestly, he couldn't even imagine the benefits of refining such a power. But Yin asked if there wasn't a person inside it. The master replied it was impossible. However, little by little a being began to appear. This being had a sculpted body and emanated absurd power. Who emerged from that bright light was Xiao from the demonic race. As she opened her eyes, Xiao said she had slept for a very, very long time. Like, really long. The master was horrified because for a demonic spirit to reach human form, it would have to be at least a great demon. Xiao used her power and took a flower, calling upon the emperor demons of the 4 directions of the world. But as she did, she remembered a memory from the past, before sleeping, and felt pain in her head from an old wound. The master asked what his disciples were waiting for. He ordered them to capture that demoness for him. Even knowing it was madness, the disciples charged forward. Xiao just smiled, saying she felt that content was in need of an empress. Meanwhile, right below her, the servants were climbing up, and she teased that they would be eliminated for such insolence. Then she snapped her fingers, and several beautiful flowers began to bloom around them. The instant a petal touched a disciple's face, he completely exploded, vanishing at once. Xiao wondered why she was so weak. She couldn't eliminate the sect master quickly, and he, seized by fear, ran away upon seeing his disciples being annihilated. But he could feel it was already too late to escape as more petals flew toward him. The instant her power touched the master, he noticed it caused absolutely nothing. Xiao knew she was weak, so she began focusing even more energy in her hands, trying to destroy that master with several bursts of power. But when her attacks hit him, they simply vanished, as if they were nothing. Xiao fell to her knees. She knew her power was too weak to fight now, and the master wasted no time, channeling a huge sword aura in the air. Xiao received that strike head-on. The master, without hesitation, rushed to her and grabbed her neck. He lifted her from the ground, saying that by absorbing her he would surely reach the celestial ranking. In the background, who awakened was our protagonist. Tyne asked the system why that demoness seemed so weak. The system replied that the gardener needed to make contact with his plants. Tyne quickly ran toward the two, telling the demoness to give him her hand. However, a blast of the master's power struck him, throwing him to the ground as a sword of aura formed right above him. Xiao couldn't believe that human was so foolish as to challenge her too, but for some reason she felt she needed to touch his hand. Then she moved her little princess foot closer and touched the protagonist's hand. The instant the two touched, a huge surge of power began to emanate from her. The system congratulated Tuwen for obtaining his first spiritual plant. The master was terrified to see such power rising, while the protagonist's divine talent began to awaken. His energy core was formed in a place, let's say, quite peculiar. The demoness also felt her power increasing. But the master and Yuya wouldn't allow them to continue with those tricks and began raising their own power, challenging them. The protagonist asked the system to save them as soon as possible. At that moment, the union between plant and human took place. Tuan was surrounded by a great shell and wielded a flower sword, striking a blow right ahead. That strike destroyed an entire mountain. He literally wiped out the mountain where the Zune sect was located. The master was in shock, unable to understand how that was possible, while fear took over his face. Tuan was now equipped with the super armor of the human plant, radiating an immeasurable aura. The sect disciples were terrified, as his energy was frightening, and his half-plant appearance made everything even stranger. But Tuan realized he couldn't control all that power. Even so, he didn't want to fail again and attack the master with his sword. The master drew 2 aura blades to counter, but when Tuan's power got close, he was horrified. He still managed to defend himself, but was thrown far away. Tuan appeared in a flash right behind him and delivered a powerful kick, sending the master flying through the air. Then he pointed his blade at the old man. Tuan asked what his last words would be, but the master began to laugh until all his inner energy exploded in a strong purple aura, even tearing his clothes apart. The protagonist became serious. Even Xiao watched in shock. That was the secret art of the Zune sect, the purple sword art. The master's speed increased absurdly, almost hitting Tuan. He deflected the strike and asked where the old man had gotten that kind of technique, but realized that the purple arts were stronger than his flower sword. When his sword shattered, Tuan understood things were about to get ugly. Half of his mask broke apart. The master kept attacking with fast and powerful strikes. Xiao could see that Tuan was struggling to fight back. Suddenly a great light spread, and even her melons seemed to float in the air with so much power emanating. Our boy finally understood how to use cultivation. Until then he didn't even know how to properly wield a sword. Now the flower sword grew even larger, and Xiao told him to fight seriously. Tuan began to understand everything, how to channel inner and outer energy to create more spiritual power. Then he warned that he would show his true power. He unleashed his special attack, the Peony Flower Slash, causing absurd destruction in front of the master. Tuan was using the great advantage of plants, the quick absorption of spiritual power from the air. Xiao realized he was using the same type of energy as hers, as all the flowers around began to shine with powerful ki. They appeared around the master, beautiful but deadly, and all exploded in a massive kaboom. The master was launched who knows where. From afar, Yin watched everything, unable to believe that sacrifice had been in vain. The master, already in shambles, raised his hand and apologized to the protagonist. He said he had been deceived by that damn little girl, pointing at Yin. Tuan gave a faint smile, vanished with his sword in hand, and said he wouldn't kill him, but in return the master should eliminate his own disciple. The girl, terrified, started running, shaking her melons from side to side, but she was quickly pierced through by the master's hand. Xiao merely commented that Tuan shouldn't let others go so easily. Then he looked around and saw several flowers forming, filled with immense power. They all shot toward the master, who was completely torn apart. With no salvation, the old man fell to the ground, finished. Tuan said he had already seen many Merino videos of this type, and therefore knew Yuya would come back for revenge in the future. Suddenly all that power came out from the protagonist's core, and a huge flower grew right in front of him. All that power came from the great demon Xiao that was inside the protagonist. Once again she told him to kiss her beautiful princess feet. But Tuan just slapped that foot after all, it was filthy. She got really irritated, asking if he didn't want to be eliminated right now by her powers. After all, he was just a mere human and had to obey all her principles. Then she quickly grabbed the protagonist by the collar and suddenly planted a kiss on him. "I don't know about you, but I'd take that deal. Tell me, would you do it too?" Tuan quickly pushed her away, asking what she was doing, but the girl grabbed his face and squeezed his cheeks. She didn't want to let him escape and gave him another kiss. The protagonist was already at his limit from so many kisses, and it seemed that was restoring her power. Soon she questioned what kind of evil and wicked art he had used to bind her to him. Tuan got angry because she was the one who kissed him first, not the other way around. Meaning she stole his first kiss, so she was a delinquent. He immediately questioned how a demon over 10,000 years old was only kissing for the first time now. She was completely embarrassed, refusing to answer. She just began creating several flowers around, saying he was just a mere human and she wouldn't forgive that insolence. And indeed she was creating a gigantic flower in front of the protagonist. He knew that could completely obliterate everything around. But Xiao realized her power had been restored after kissing the protagonist. It seemed that guy really recharged her like a power outlet. Honestly, she had never been so close to a human before, so her body ended up absorbing that power. While our boy was running away, she sent several roots to chase him and told him not to try any funny business in front of her. The girl was draining all the power from the protagonist's body. She got really close and even started licking him. Tuan made a completely embarrassed face but said some shameless things to her. Xiao was asking him to help her recover her power. After all, she was drained. But it seemed she was also draining our boy, who was already at his limit. Tuan called her a beast, but she corrected him, saying she was a plant. Not that I believe plants have melons, right? Anyway, they went to the sect's portal. There, several disciples of the Zune sect appeared to rescue their master, but Xiao pointed her finger at them. Creating a small flower, the protagonist told her not to do that because those guys were innocent. But Sha just called him a loser and kicked him in the head. Then she extended her hand again, saying he didn't understand anything about the world of Murin. Then she fired violent spiritual rays toward the disciples. But she missed on purpose, asking what he was trying to do with those little tricks. Tuen warned that the two were connected by the spiritual core and that she shouldn't do that kind of thing, but soon took a blow to the face. It seemed the great demon was very cranky with him, but ended up laughing hard because a mere human was trying to help her. Among the disciples, one of them jumped on the protagonist, saying he was the one who eliminated the sect master. Sha got irritated because she had said that would happen eventually. At the moment the protagonist got hit, Sha also felt the same pain inside her. That bald old man started charging his weapon with a great aura, aiming at the protagonist. However, Tuen unleashed his power and fired a great laser toward the man. He fell to the ground after a while, completely disoriented. Tuen asked what had happened to the great senior brother of the sect and even pointed to his wet pants because the guy was scared to death by that attack. The protagonist began to combine all the techniques he saw in Murin, and it was working. That man said again that he wouldn't stand a chance because now he would go all out. And so the two went for a crazy one-on-one, but it wasn't crazy at all because they started slapping each other like kids. Sha was wondering how that human could use her demonic arts. She got so curious that she raised her hand and channeled her own demonic art toward the protagonist. Tuen was about to catch the guy off guard until he saw several flowers growing in his hand. Then his palm emitted a great ki that pierced that man, tearing off all his clothes and leaving him trembling in fear. Right after, the protagonist's palm crossed the entire mountain, and that man fell to the ground on his knees, bowing his head and apologizing, saying the boy was the new sect master. Meanwhile, the other disciples were leaving. They didn't want to stay near that monster. Tuen just stared at the demoness, saying she should give up. After all, the two were connected, but she told him to shut up because she was still thinking about everything. She ended up remembering the past and the old masters. Everything was very strange since she had awakened after so long and the world had changed a lot. On the other side was the protagonist. He was digging with a shovel, asking the system if there really wasn't any alternative to save that girl. The system did its best and wrapped Yin in some kind of magical plant cloak. Her body would start to wither within a week. If it went beyond that, she wouldn't return. Tuen was very downcast. Yin was always bossy and hot-headed, but she was always there to help. Until at the last moment she gave her own life to save our boy. She was firm and confident in her beliefs in justice. He wanted to help, wanted to do something more to save her, but just frowned and called the system, because this was a world of immortal cultivation, so there had to be a chance. He entered the system to look for everything he could about that world. Besides the system, our boy had a lot of experience since he had cultivated for many years in several Murin stories. He went through item by item. All those materials were extremely rare. One of them had a very special and unique characteristic, but he was getting nervous because those items seemed completely unreal. The system said it would explain better until it showed the image of the immortal lotus, the item that made people reborn, but as demons. Tuen thought, whoa, hey, this is kind of exaggerated, isn't it? It's way too big. Even so, he was really happy about it and asked for the item's location. But the system warned that there was no mechanism to locate the immortal lotus. Clearly, the protagonist got angry and threw the screen to the ground. The system still warned that there was someone who could sense the location of spiritual plants. And speaking of the little princess feet, clearly it was talking about Xiao. She was nervous because several spiritual plants were hidden in the sect. Then she looked right behind her and saw several disciples being devoured by gigantic plants. She calmly approached the field, surrounded by flowers, and just laughed as she watched her little plants devouring those greedy men who came to take them. Then she heard a familiar voice and saw an arm jumping out of a tree. It was our protagonist saying those plants shouldn't eat people. Right away, all the plants spat out the disciples, completely obeying our boy. Shadow didn't expect that this human had a constitution capable of controlling all the plants, but suddenly, a carnivorous plant attacked the protagonist and swallowed him whole. It was strange for Xiao to see that because she was the empress of plants. She simply explained that those bastards were trying to steal the spiritual plants but couldn't. After all, the plants were much more powerful. One of the men was even crucified on a huge flower. Tuen stated that any cultivator who tried to enter there would be eliminated by the plants. But compared to all of them, he asked if by any chance Xiao knew the immortal lotus. She giggled and asked if he wanted to save someone. He replied yes, that he needed to save the woman who sacrificed herself so he could live. Xiao clearly knew where it was but decided to play hard to get. After all, why would she tell such a disgusting human like Tuen? She leaned her head against his and he said he could recharge her powers. She ended up remembering that kiss from before, and she didn't want to remember it so much that she smacked the protagonist on the head. She pointed at the disciples and said she would trade their lives for the location of the immortal lotus. Tuen didn't like that at all. After all, they were innocent people. A true protagonist would never abandon those people. So he stopped to think and sighed loudly. Then he shouted to everyone that Lady Xiao wanted the useless lives they had. Now they were being condemned for trying to steal the spiritual plants from that garden. He pointed at Xiao and said that the great lady of the plants wanted to rebuild her army. He asked what they would do since Lady Xiao couldn't be a lonely commander, and opened his arms yelling that, but she grabbed the protagonist by the collar, asking when she had ever planned to be a military commander. To him it was obvious. All the plants back there were waiting for the Great Empress. Besides, the new commander of the plants was actually very cute. Xiao just released the men from the trap saying they would have to be useful and show results or be eliminated. All the disciples fell to their knees, thanking the great masters and swearing to dedicate their lives to them. The protagonist just waved his hand saying everything was fine and he'd talk to them when he needed something. Thus, all the disciples left to rebuild the great sect. He looked at Xiao and said all those men's lives belonged to her, and now he wanted information. The girl made that possessive demonic face and warned that he might conquer that plant, but maybe he'd never return. The next day, one of the disciples presented the new place to his master. It was the great Tian sect which had just been born. It seemed the disciples had named the sect after the protagonist. A bit embarrassing, to be honest, but he was satisfied with that. Right behind the demoness arrived completely embarrassed. When the disciples called her the master's wife, she screamed furiously at everyone trying to explain. She called them all fools and stormed off. Even so, the protagonist was excited. He knew he had a possible wife. Of course, Xiao pulled his ear for acting like an idiot, but soon after began giving more information about the immortal lotus. She explained that the story began thousands of years ago. The White Emperor was the greatest human cultivator and began to pressure the plant clan. In fact, he pressured the entire demonic clan, and the plants were no exception. At that time, the plant clan was spread all over the world. The White Emperor gave his brothers for humans to cultivate. The plants were the beginning of many sects around the world, including the birth of the Blessed Sect. She just said that this was the greatest and most evil sect ever created with her plant brothers. But Tian asked if, after all that time, that so-called Blessed Sect still existed. And she replied yes, because the purple technique the master here showed came from there, and warned that she needed to recover her strength before entering that sect. But the protagonist couldn't do that while holding her. That's because Yuya could simply leave at any time. Overcome by the shame of being touched, she just punched the protagonist hard and sent him flying. Every time our boy touched Xiao, she gained even more power. She also said there was always a way around that, but he should follow all her orders. Cheeto in turn asked the disciples if the previous master happened to have any treasure vault, and one of the little ones there said yes, he had a big safe. The protagonist went hopping over there because now he was the new master and wanted it. The demoness stared at the protagonist because he was simply innocent, so she could easily control him. Jiao wanted to meet another demoness while imagining her, and if he managed that, he'd have his chance to start the immortal war. Inside the vault, the protagonist found a small pill, and the system warned that the item wouldn't be very effective for him. So he just tossed it to the little boy right behind him, and the kid was extremely happy to receive such a special item. The disciples were talking among themselves about how the master could call a spiritual pill ordinary, and that he kept talking to himself all the time. But one thing was certain, after seeing that battle he was extremely powerful. He could control a demoness and had the power of the plants on his side. But in the background our boy started coughing. He pointed his finger at himself, saying he was the reincarnation of a great martial ancestor and that he would now dominate the world. And if they intended to obey him, they'd have the whole world in the palm of their hands. But if they decided otherwise, he'd use them all as fertilizer for the plants. He even threw several treasures he found in the vault to those men, saying they should now evolve and grow stronger to make the sect powerful. The protagonist asked the name of that little dwarf, saying that the plant in his hand worked as a sound transmitter. The name of that guy was Mingao, an outer disciple of the sect. T1 believed that this little guy was actually a girl. After all, that person was wearing strange clothes and had a very feminine name. But in the end, he just told everyone to stay alert and obey Mingao. Then he went outside. He was very satisfied that his cultivator life was finally starting. Besides that, there were many items in the spatial ring. That old man had a ton of extremely powerful spiritual items. He even removed that grand purple sword from inside the ring. But when he pulled it out, the sword turned into a hoe. The system said it was transforming everything prosperous for the protagonist to use in battle. Of course, he didn't like receiving that old item, but ended up getting smacked, and it was by the hoe itself. It was saying it was much more powerful than that old sword, and it seemed that this cultivator life of our protagonist was getting pretty weird. Later that same day, the desert started shaking, and a huge beast appeared shouting the name of the Zune sect. Not far away, a lightning bolt crossed the entire sky, and this was the vehicle of our protagonist along with the demoness. The place they needed to go was millions of kilometers away. The system appeared saying that the host's battery had run out. In other words, he and Yuya fell from the sky, and that's how it happened, with a beautiful fall and a huge explosion. It seems our protagonist's luck was really wow. It was great luck because he landed right on top of the tall girl. But once again, Xiao slapped him hard for doing that, and asked what he was staring at while making a shortcut on her. The two started slapping each other like teenagers. Then someone appeared right in front of them asking how they dared to do such shameless things in broad daylight. He shot a sand attack toward them, and it seemed to work because the protagonists were swallowed by the sands. The guy noticed several plants coming his way, and those same roots started punching them non-stop while the protagonist tried to get out. Xiao also managed to leave from inside the protagonist's core, and that man from before was trapped in all the flower roots. T1 asked why he attacked out of nowhere, and the man before answering started writing many symbols in the sand. That was a power that spread the sand around and blinded everyone. The protagonist got extremely angry because that guy simply disappeared, but he also vanished along with our boy's golden hoe. And on the other side, the guy was sliding through the sands, really happy for having stolen it. That golden item seemed quite expensive. However, at his feet, the roots started forming again, and the guy was pulled by a large plant. That same man asked if by any chance our protagonist was an evil cultivator. Then the ceiling was completely destroyed, and the Sandman fell on his butt. Meanwhile, up above, the plants were spitting out our protagonist. It looked like they had arrived at that bandit's home. He was scared. After all, that was his life. He had to tell everyone to leave, so he threw several sticks of dynamite into the air to warn everyone. T1 told the demoness to prepare for battle. The Sandman said that everyone in his village was very cruel, and that when they came they would finish them off. And who arrived were the three great brothers. But they were also captured right after by the roots. The demon just wanted to leave there and go back to normal work. But the protagonist was so angry that he slapped all the guys in front of him. The little boy trapped said that he could torture them but would never return to those human cauldrons. T1 asked what the hell he was talking about. He was only chasing that masked guy because of his item. And when the bandit opened the little bag, there was the hoe. The guy just apologized, saying he stole it by accident after seeing the couple playing outside. He seemed quite shameless, but at least he returned the protagonist's item. T1 said that guy was really weak and should stop robbing people, or he'd end up in even bigger trouble. The man just said his village was very poor and that he did it to help the others. He was doing that because his life was being extorted by the Blessing Sect. The protagonist asked him to tell that story. After all, it made no sense for an alliance of sects to attack a small village. It was explained that the Blessing Sect had captured a primordial beast and used it as a base. The cultivators from that sect, who were part of the Blessing Alliance, began robbing nearby villages. They captured and kidnapped children to work for them. Several ancient families eventually perished because of that sect, and even his poor little sister was captured too. Then one day while running away, he ended up finding those underground caves. Since then he had been planning to bring the sect down. The protagonist wondered if that was a side mission from the main world of the protagonist, then asked if the guy's idea was to sneak in and save his sister inside the sect. But while he said that the ceiling was destroyed once again, a man arrived laughing because he knew Yuya would find that place. Two members of the Blessing Sect were arriving there. The protagonist was in disbelief because this was getting way too easy. Those two had very unusual outfits and said that everyone's head in there would be worth a lot of money. The Sandman was in a really bad situation, but soon thought about using the protagonist as a shield, so he asked the two for a big favor. He said they should take care of the kids and run away because he would fight. Then he used the sands to jump toward those two lunatics with extremely short and flashy clothes. But those two guys just laughed, saying that a mere cultivator of the human realm could never defeat them. And indeed, the Sandman saw several lightning bolts coming his way. He was trapped in midair because of all that power. But when his clothes were torn, they saw that in fact it was a woman, and with huge melons, to say the least. Those men only said they had found a beautiful specimen. The fat one immediately jumped, wanting to enjoy everything that woman had to offer. However, his wrist was grabbed, and someone said he was just a scoundrel. Obviously it was the protagonist who did that to stop those two. The man quickly broke free and asked who he was, but the funniest part was that he was flying on a golden hoe. Tuin got angry because they were mocking him and called Xiao to combine their powers. But she just shouted that she was transferring her power to Tuin and that he should deal with it alone. He felt really frightened before the power of those two guys, but then remembered that that day he had destroyed a gigantic strike on the mountain, so surely Yuya could fight them, and a big punch was already coming his way. Xiao widened her eyes at the scene and felt that his demonic power was being trained very fast. Tuin was using demonic power to perform his own techniques, and he managed to obliterate those two. Minutes later, he landed on the ground and managed to rescue that crazy sand woman. She just watched, seeing that those two from the Blessing Sect were face first on the wall. The protagonist gave a long laugh, saying he was surprised by his own strength and asked if Xiao wasn't his business partner. After all, they should fight together. But the plant got mad at that. After all, he was draining all her power. They both turned away when called a couple, and Xiao remembered that kiss from before. That left her quite dizzy. Tuin warned that the place was exposed and they should leave. The Sand Woman asked if their plan wasn't also to enter the Blessing Sect. And yes, that was the idea. But now he planned to rescue her and those kids right behind. The girl then took an item from between her breasts and approached the protagonist. She said that since he was her benefactor, she would give him something very important, and it was precisely the map that led to the Blessing Sect alliance. They would invade exactly where there were fewer guards and they should trust her. After all, her clan had been setting traps throughout the desert for years. Also, she would finally be able to rescue her little sister and showed a picture of her. The protagonist just sighed, saying he had memorized the girl's face. Once again, the Sandwoman thanked him, thinking that guy was way too sincere. That way, the protagonist went to the desert. The desert woman set them on the right path to reach the Blessing Sect and said they should be careful because if they were discovered, it would be really bad. She also asked for a moment, placed a rune inscription and said that it was a blessing from her clan, hoping the moon goddess could protect her benefactors. Honestly, the woman didn't want them to go because that place was pure evil, but it was the only chance to save her little sister. When they arrived, a very strange, ugly, and weird person said they couldn't enter because they were wearing too many clothes and looked way too normal. And Tuan pointed at another person, saying that one looked even more normal. But that woman turned around, put a little mustache on her face, and declared that she wasn't a woman now, but a man with a very handsome mustache. She was allowed to pass and, well, I don't know what's going on, okay? This story has lost all direction for me. Tuan just looked at that with a dumb, completely shocked face. Then he let out a loud roar showing all his power and asked if he could go to the grand entrance ceremony. The creature in front said he could. After all, the purple power was really strong in him, so it seemed he had practiced a lot. Apparently Tuan had been training the purple power pose all the way to the sect, but a guard grabbed Xiao because her clothes weren't daring enough. She ordered the pig to take his hands off her, or she'd make him wish for elimination. The protagonist trembled in fear. After all, he was surrounded by enemies. But the guard fell in love with her words. She could even be the sect's queen with that attitude. So he just held out his hand, saying she could pass freely and wished them a good entrance ceremony. Going into the inner hall were taken to Bogang, one of the heroines of the Blessing Sect, who was nervous and slamming the table. In front of her was Kucha, another hero, saying she was too agitated and should calm down. But the woman kept yelling that they were both the same and that he shouldn't order her around. Kucha realized his talisman had been destroyed and was very sad since his most respected disciple had been eliminated. He was angry, asking who had done that to his dear disciple, while Bogang laughed non-stop. But a calm voice behind them told both to be quiet. It was Wuji, the master of the Blessing Sect, radiating a terrible aura. Bogang tried to ask something, but Wuji quickly cut her off, saying that the grand entry ceremony of the sect was beginning. She believed that the person responsible for that would be at the ceremony, and when that happened, the two heroes could crush the invaders. Meanwhile, she watched several orbs, waiting for something interesting to happen at the ceremony. In a nearby citadel, our two protagonists were inside, now without that ridiculous disguise. Tuan's mission was to find the immortal lotus, but while thinking about the plans, a girl shouted that they needed to bring more food. That girl was a total mess. The protagonist greeted her and asked who she was. She introduced herself as Shukun, a perfect master and guest. Xiao whispered that they shouldn't provoke that girl since her cultivation was at the intermediate earth level. Even with that small body, she was extremely powerful. With that, Tuan just said he would get food for the great master. He entered a large hall, but Shukun couldn't find anything around. She asked if it was really there. Tuan frowned and said there was no gift there for the great master, but she asked what that meant while expanding all her power. It seemed that a great master was indeed powerful, strong enough to blow up the entire place. But she calmed down when she realized that the big guy wasn't part of the Blessing Sect. Tuan introduced himself, told her his name, and said he was also there to look for the treasure. But it seemed Shukun only wanted food. She didn't care at all about the so-called sacred treasure. She didn't want to go around searching for relics and asked what the protagonist's suggestion was. That was when he pulled the map from his pocket, saying he had a great plan to get a coupon by fighting in the tournament and winning. Shukun said that what she was looking for wasn't among the tournament rewards, but Tuan explained that if she won, they could see where the servants kept all the treasure. That way, they could enter and steal whatever they wanted. The girl seemed to really like that idea. She left excited, saying she would win no matter what. Xiao, however, doubted that the silly little girl could do something like that. Soon we are taken to the girl with the mustache. In front of her there was a muscular man completely defeated. Everyone around was watching the woman win the battles. Her name was Hui, and next to her was her battle partner, the Glutton. For some reason, the protagonist was really confident that this girl could win in the arena. After all, she seemed very strong, to the point of knocking everyone down. Literally, she defeated every enemy with just one punch. He said that according to the map, the slave auction house was ahead, and the demon wondered why they were going there. Indeed, it was a large hall calling all cultivators around. Inside, the protagonist paid for some special items to enter. The auctioneer got excited when he saw those stones, since they were of the highest level, and even more excited when he saw an Elysian level token inside. So they just flopped onto a big love couch. Yes, a couch full of little hearts and a romantic light. Right in front, the auctioneer began to announce, since he had many interesting things to tell everyone. The first was a beast girl with a very small body. The protagonist immediately frowned upon seeing that since the girl had no expression at all. The auctioneer began to talk about the many qualities of that human beast. Tion stood up to curse them, Xiao asked if he had forgotten where he was. Of course he knew, but even so, it wasn't easy to see people being sold. One of the men asked if those slaves couldn't fight back against their owners. The auctioneer praised the question, saying it was very smart, but pulled a potion from his sleeve and ordered it to be applied. The potion went into the slave's mouth, making her completely intimidated. Xiao wasn't liking any of it, especially seeing the faces of those completely deranged humans. At that moment the crowd exploded, and the protagonist stepped forward to save the girl with his magic hoe. He removed that ring from his finger, saying that all of it was payment. The man realized that there was immeasurable value inside and was happy because all his years of work were basically there. But Tion just called that guy an idiot for selling girls. Using his golden hoe, he gave the man a good slap. Xiao called the human an idiot, saying he was doing all that just for a mortal girl. The man behind said he was just a puppet and shouldn't attack him, but clearly the protagonist was going to hit him. After all, he was a man with no shame at all. Before that, a blade approached, asking why he was causing so much trouble. Xiao quickly pulled him out of the way to avoid the strike. The man from before was cut in half by that powerful blade. He laughed loudly and told all his friends around that it was fine, since he arrived while the protagonist was putting the cloak over the girl he had just rescued. Shukun saw a huge explosion coming from the auction, so she just jumped once more into the fighting arena, which seemed to have a crowd of fans. She would fight against Hui and the Glutton at the same time. It seemed that the Glutton also had a wave of fans. The referee shouted that after so many fights the grand prize would be given to them and asked what they desired. Both at the same time answered that they wanted the Immortal Lotus. Inside the Master's Pavilion, Bogang was laughing. After all, those two girls wanted the same item. The Master ordered Bogang to test both cultivators. If we go back a few moments earlier, in the auction house, a fight was happening between the leader there and the protagonist, who was borrowing Xiao's power. It exploded into a bright flame, to the point the leader couldn't see anything, but said it was just a child's prank. Even so, he was completely shocked to see that being with armor made of flowers in front of him. He had to dodge an attack because he felt something very unpleasant. On his scythe, a root started to grow along with the flower, and the protagonist just ran away from there, leaving the leader completely trapped in roots. But that man was exploding in fury, saying that such evil arts could never hold him. His inner energy burned so much that it destroyed all the roots. He broke free and quickly launched himself toward the protagonist, almost hitting him with that blaze of fire. The protagonist just jumped back, saying that if he moved, he would eliminate the girl. In truth, it was the demon inside his body saying that. But the leader of the auction house only apologized, saying they shouldn't hurt her, and gave a long laugh, asking if he really thought he would obey. Then he used his command ring to make the beast return, and the little girl left the protagonist's arms to enter the ring. It was very practical to have a ring like that which could confine beasts. The men around only praised, saying it was a very well thought idea. The man said that when he eliminated the protagonist, he would give everyone a 20% discount at the auction house. But Tyran was tremendously angry at that guy for treating a person like an object. Xiao told him to be careful, since they were already at their power limit. He didn't care about the human, but if Xiao got dragged into it, she would be eliminated too. Tyran turned to her angrily, asking if she was really a person, and the demoness didn't know what to answer. Once again, Tyran said that it didn't matter if she was the demon empress or a plant, but to him she was a very important person. He would do whatever it took to rescue her too. His soul was burning, and he said he would never let anyone treat others like objects. If the time came, he would risk his life for Xiao, no matter the reason. However, the leader of the auction house wouldn't let that slide and quickly charged at the protagonist. Then the blade cut his armor in half, but it seemed everything was an illusion, because Tyran appeared on the other side, among the roots. In fact, the cut had really hit the demon, but he transferred the damage and asked to focus while he began to help, transferring his power too. More roots emerged from the ground to grab the leader of the auction house. However, using his flame power, he managed to cut those roots quickly. Then he used multiple flame clones to attack the protagonist. All of them launched attacks through the air. Tyran called his sword, and a great blade appeared in his hands. The system detected the wielder's emotion, and the auction leader got scared because it looked like a superior artifact. Indeed, it was the Sword of Emotion, Paonia. The sword shone so brightly that it hit the auction leader, leaving him badly wounded, but he didn't give up. Then he activated the Burning Blood art, which required the blood sacrifice of several people to be used. Everyone around started having their blood drained. The leader asked the guests to calm down, saying he just needed their bodies to fight that lunatic. The protagonist got angry again, since more people were being used as tools. Earlier we were taken to Kusha, and the glutton also seemed tired after so many hits. The fight looked very exhausting, and the arena was completely destroyed. Pai asked why the girl was also looking for the Immortal Lotus, and the little one just raised her middle finger, saying she didn't care. From afar, Bogang watched, saying she was lucky to witness so much power there. And I don't know about you, but that woman gives me chills. Damn, even so she managed to defend herself and quickly launched a powerful attack against the glutton. However, it was 2 against 1, and Hui came with a deadly kick. Kusha managed to block the powerful kick coming from above. Then she grabbed Hui's leg and started spinning her around the arena, sending the girl flying away. Threw her far away. Hui went flying so fast that the narrator couldn't even keep up. The glutton managed to save her, and the judge informed that Hui still hadn't used her cultivation powers. Up above, the tall girl was preparing to attack. Kusha asked if that was another prank, but Hui said this was the real insect kick while projecting her body. A huge surge of power came with the kick, exploding the arena. The narrator was stunned by all the smoke, and Kusha felt a small pain from the attack. Hui was disappointed, thinking the kick would be effective against her. The entire arena was wiped out by that power. Bogang arrived saying he would intervene. He announced she was the arena champion, but the judge said he couldn't break the rules, even if she was the great heroine of the sect. Bogang approached with a malicious smile, told the judge to call her princess, and gave him a slap that sent him flying. The giant woman jumped into the arena with crushing strength. She apologized for interrupting, but said she needed to do something interesting. She wanted to defeat both girls together. She called them for a one-on-one. Both could come at once. The girls didn't waste time and rushed toward Bogang. At the moment of the attack, Bogang said Yuya would announce the new rules. It seems she didn't even feel the strike on her big belly. While punching Kusha, she said the battle would last until someone was eliminated. The punch was so devastating it sent Kusha flying. The little girl smashed several buildings in the air, and Bogang asked if Hui could worry about others while she punched the glutton, who was holding everything back. Hui was scared since her partner was under pressure but managed to rescue him, asking if he was okay. She heard a devastating sound coming from afar. It was the sound of disaster. A small girl expanded many times, and an attack from the celestial palm fell upon the arena. Bogang took the attack head-on, becoming deformed. Everyone in the sect saw how big Kusha had become. She was literally gigantic, destroying the entire arena, but she realized she had made a mistake. That was nearly impossible. On the other side, Bogang appeared shining brightly but looking strange. She slipped on the oil beneath her feet and clumsily fell from the building. It seemed to be her special move, covering herself completely in fat. She used her inner energy to turn into a ball and bounce through the city, hitting her target. She landed a huge belly hit right on Kusha's head. Hui couldn't believe the technique. It was completely stupid yet highly effective. It managed to hit Kusha in several sensitive spots. Inside the alliance, Kusha greeted the great leader. The master saw that his big guy had captured many people. Kusha found 20 alliance invaders and threw their heads to the master. He could identify each invader by holding one of their heads. The master asked if they had any common plan, but Kusha said there was none. It was just as the master expected. After all, those caught were only the lowly ones. Kusha asked what kind of ancient secrets the master was looking for among those invaders. Woji Eyes, he asked if he knew how the White Spirit sect became the greatest sect in the world. There was only one reason: the power they had hidden. Kushi asked what kind of hidden power that was. Woji explained that the world of cultivation was divided into 8 stages, but the Emperor of the White Spirit had only reached the level of isolation cultivation. So who could reach the level of cosmic and universal cultivation? Woji, there was only one answer to that. They were the primordial gods of this world, controlling everything. Legends say those beings created all universes and shaped every species. If someone found even the smallest trace of them, they could take the chance to transcend dimensions and surpass the Emperor of the White Spirit. Kusha fell to the ground asking if that was truly his master's ambition, and that was exactly what he wanted. Not Yuya, he would be just another toy in the hands of those gods. Kei understood what his master's ancient art was trying to achieve, and said that was exactly it. He would use the favor of the primordial gods to overthrow the White Spirit sect. He also asked if the master was satisfied with just what they had. Was he truly content cultivating in the earthly realm when they could be much more than that? Kei didn't know what to say, completely horrified by those words. The master gave a wide smile and helped Kusha to stand. After all, only the two of them knew this great secret. Kusha respected the master and wanted to follow him forever to succeed in the world, but asked how he would do it since there were such ancient secrets they might never find. The master laughed heartily, saying he was already finding some of those secrets while observing Rui, who carried an ancient and legendary art. On the other side was Kusha, extremely powerful for his age, alongside the lost boy who had no proper cultivation but was very strong with that armor. We'll eliminate those 3 and then use their primordial blood to find all the secrets they hold, he said. He told Kusha he didn't need to go. Another of the 3 sect heroes was handling it, and Kusha had already done an excellent job, so now he should enjoy the human cauldron. Kusha was extremely grateful to the great leader for that benevolence. Today, in fact, he wanted to devour his subordinates as soon as they evolved in realm and became even stronger. On the other side, Peonia's sword power was spreading throughout the sect, and Tiwan was already getting tired of fighting so many people around. That auction leader was using everyone's bodies and could strengthen them by infusing his blood. He even used them as portals and struck the protagonist from completely random places. The people were completely insane. Parts of their bodies attacked the protagonist, and there were hundreds of people advancing with multiple blades. Little by little, each one projected blades toward the protagonist. He was being completely pierced by so many attacks. Xiao told the protagonist not to faint because the entire demon race was counting on him. The protagonist noticed that this technique was strange and didn't know how to get close to the enemy. Still, Xiao relied completely on him. He just shouted that it wasn't over yet and projected all his power in the Peonia sword to eliminate everyone around. Every person attacking the protagonist was completely obliterated by that sharp sword. The demon also helped, indicating where the enemies were. With her help and the power emerging in the protagonist, a pillar rose to the heavens. Yahello said that if he didn't win now, he would just surrender. But it seemed he hadn't won because the leader was still ahead. He was excited, controlling even more servants and laughing loudly. A thought passed through the protagonist's mind when he heard the enemy speak. The image of a great commander appeared in his mind, and he joked that now he had a perfect plan. Then he conjured several glowing peonies around, but the leader already knew that trick and didn't fall for it. Around him all the servants ran while the protagonist created a large peony in the middle of his chest. Roots emerged from his body, projecting gigantic and beautiful flowers all around. However, all of them had an extremely deadly aura. T1 exploded in an aura so overwhelming and fast that it traveled across the entire room, reaching the leader's flank in less than a second, striking him with a powerful kick that left him unconscious and flying across the room. But T1 gave no pause and quickly flew in another direction, striking him with multiple swords from all angles. All the cutting blows completely pierced the leader's body. The power of the peonia flower was also in the protagonist's souls. The demon praised, saying that this was a great evolution because the armor was completely transformed. The protagonist was inspired by an anime he had seen long ago where the great commander Lin modified his mothership with reverse engineering to eliminate the enemies. In fact, the story flopped because no one liked the continuation. But you can help this story not flop by liking and commenting a lot, so YouTube will recognize the work and we can bring continuations in other videos. So I hope you comment on the channel, okay? Now that I know you will comment and the video won't flop, let's return to the scene. The system congratulated the protagonist for achieving an armor upgrade. He gained a great aura as if he had truly leveled up. Thus he could use the armor whenever he wanted. However, the auction leader had not yet been completely eliminated, and his aura continued rising. He began to levitate in the air with all those flames around. The protagonist was excited with the demon at his side supporting him, but the enemy began shouting even louder, saying he would burn everything with his great power, and he pushed himself to the limit, even his face transforming into a complete demon. The system recognized that this enemy was very powerful and was using wicked arts. In the next moment, the guy threw a large fireball toward the protagonist. Unable to dodge, T1 deflected the entire attack with his sword. The opponent was laughing because if not for the sword, he would have been burned to ashes. The system started beeping saying that T1 could do it. Well, now just do it. You can do it. Let's go, my champion. The protagonist just called the system useless while flying toward the opponent. The system wanted him to transform the sword into an even more powerful version. The maniac wrapped in flames asked why he was talking to his sword. Have you completely lost your mind? Then he conjured the malice net and we were taken inside the protagonist's sword with a girl inside. T1 was speaking directly with her, asking for her power. He wanted to feel the full essence she could give him. He asked for her help to complete the challenge, and then a completely blue aura began to emanate from the sword. The girl responded to her commander's call and released all her power into the net. The auction leader shouted that this was impossible as a great blue power surged toward him. The sword stated that this attack was its vote of confidence in its new master. All this power was truly catastrophic. The protagonist asked if that had really been the sword. It appeared to its master and said yes. The demon asked who the hell that girl was, and the protagonist revealed that it was his sword. Not even the demon could recognize the sword's power, called Cloud. When the girl touched the ground, she headbutted Xiao's stomach hard, sending her away from her master. She asked T1 what he thought. After all, it was a very sharp sword that would now be used by him. The protagonist fell into the cliché of the talking sword. Yeah, it seems he had read many Murim works. We're together, my friend. Wuji laughed heartily, saying that the master could use it as he wished. At that moment, he remembered another manga he had read, very explicit with huge melons, by the way. The protagonist heard a noise in the smoke, but in fact only the leader's hand remained, along with the beast's ring. On the other side, Bogang was using a violent sitting attack, and Hui quickly flew out to save her companion from that strike. They were almost hit by the devastating attack, and I also didn't want to take an attack like that, so I told the glutton to stay out because he was already exhausted. Meanwhile, Bogang approached the two with a violent look. Hui called her partner back inside a small vial. On the other side, Chukum was completely wrecked on the ground. Hui unleashed all her power and even her melons started flying. Bogang licked her lips, wanting to devour the girl. Hui dug her fingers into her breasts, activating all her power. In this way, she transformed into a Super Saiyan, and charged at Bogang, delivering a powerful kick that the giant didn't expect. Then she raised her hand and delivered another slap, sending Bogang flying to the side. Hui knew she had to end this as soon as possible. She began delivering multiple attacks on Bogang, injuring the giant. But Bogang exploded all her internal energy, shouting that the child was overdoing it by exploding her own energy meridians. Hui knew she had no other choice to defeat the great monster. She had to win to be able to revive her master. Her fellow disciples said that the immortal lotus could save the master, but all the disciples said it was impossible, that the master should rest. Hui did not want to accept that. She wanted to save her master. So both she and the glutton left the sect to rescue him. Since childhood, the master had welcomed her and always been very kind to them. She had to give her all to defeat the opponent and obtain the immortal lotus. For some reason, Bogang began toning her body, becoming even more muscular. But her movements were still slow and she couldn't hit in midair. Hai punched Bogang in the stomach, sending her flying through the air and hitting several buildings. It was impossible for Bogang because a single punch had already knocked her down. Hai was doing everything because of the immortal lotus, but Bogang quickly got up to consume a pill. Hai saw that this was bad because the pill restored her vitality. Before this could happen, Shukun's gigantic hand appeared and grabbed Bogang. The girl had an angry look staring at Bogang. Hai was glad her ally finally woke up and Shukun only needed a rest to return to action. Then she captured Bogang and began squeezing her between her hands. After defeating Bogang, a great explosion occurred throughout the sect. Shukun returned to her normal form and tossed an item into Rui's hand. It was precisely the revitalization pill. Shukun saw that Hai was a decent person, so she would not continue fighting her. She only said that she would give the immortal lotus to the girl and was also waiting for someone else. Shukun was quite wicked, to the point of using Bogang as a transport piglet. The entire sect fell into chaos. All the disciples ran to help amid all the destruction. Xiao asked why they were hiding. Just use that sword and cut everyone. But it wasn't that simple for the protagonist. He was already tired and needed to recover a little. Next to them was the small beast girl. The protagonist still had the mission of rescuing the sand girl's sister, so he needed to move to the arena to see what had happened there. Heading toward the illusion pool, a man was having all his power drained. Then they reported to the master that a major situation was happening in the arena. Someone was absorbing the others, and it seemed that Bogang was in the meantime. The master only said that he would handle these people personally while leaving the blood-filled pool. Outside in the arena, everything was destroyed. He couldn't believe that only a few people had done all that. He used his aura to pull one of the disciples' clothes and ordered him to explain everything that had happened. Right behind, another disciple also explained absolutely everything to the master. Then he ordered some men to go to the vault. Not far away, the protagonist watched the master walking, and it seemed they were heading toward the vault, the plan of our boy. He only told his companions that they would change the plan for now. Could something bigger be happening in this sect? The demon also believed this, so they needed to come up with a very good plan. The protagonist warned that he would let the monsters fight while they stole the items. Suddenly, some roots touched the protagonist. It was Xiao recharging the demon powers of our protagonist. He asked what she was doing while his foot was being pulled. Then he completely fell to the ground while all his power was being restored, including his vitality. She even told him to shut up, sealing him with a root. Xiao began crouching toward him in a very indecent position, to be honest. Right behind, the beast girl asked if they were training for something. Xiao created a large flower beneath her and said that little girls shouldn't see that, trapping her. After all, that was adult stuff. Now that no one was watching, she would take advantage of the moment. It was harvest time for her, and she looked at the protagonist with a passionate gaze. Outside the sect, the Sand Woman watched that gigantic beast walking, but she was shocked because the sect disciples were throwing people from above. She ran to see those people being thrown. She needed to do it silently and rescue those guys. The disciples up there just watched the damned ones being thrown. She was furious. After all, they treated humans merely as insects and tools. But they noticed someone's internal energy moving in the desert and saw that woman in the middle. She was extremely enraged with the Blessing sect. Her energy was exploding. Returning to the protagonist, he was completely exhausted. Xiao was fully recovered with all her demon powers. It was exactly as the Empress had expected. Xiao's power recovered whenever she touched that human. T1 was already completely hers, so he would not rebel in the future. A few steps ahead, he asked everyone to be quiet. They were approaching the great powerful master, and in front of him were the arena heroines. Bogang begged to be rescued, but Kusha just pulled the chains, saying that the little pig shouldn't speak. The man said that the girls had the courage to do that in front of him, and Hui just ordered the door to be opened. They didn't want to fight him. Kusha announced that Bogang didn't deserve the title of hero and that she would also eliminate her in this fight. Chukum began to get irritated and charged at Kusa, holding the little pig in her hands and throwing her toward the enemy. But in the blink of an eye, Kusa sliced her former companion, stating that she would eliminate all the indecent intruders today. The protagonist found it strange because those two girls had formed an unexpected alliance. While the monsters fought, he tried to find the vault. Shukun managed to fight on equal terms against the master, but he seemed much faster even for such an old man. Then he used the soul capture art on the girl and she completely lost consciousness. She was invaded by a memory from the past with 3 great beings in front of her. One great being said that they had only 1 token to summon and should not use it incorrectly. The White Emperor was honored by these words and just bowed his head in respect. The leader of all the beasts, Chukumpai, would collaborate with humans as well. This being only said that in 100,000 years he would return and hoped for good evolution. Then she entered a portal and completely disappeared. And these 2 beings, considered the strongest of the generation, felt a suffocating pressure from that primordial god. Chukumpai just laughed at the Great White Emperor, but the Emperor respected the will of that being, and also wanted things to go well for humans. And of course Chukumpai also wanted that. After all, the beasts could cooperate greatly with humans. Thus he only said goodbye to the Emperor, who quickly left. The Chukumpai felt a great pressure. After all, he was in front of great beings. Suddenly Shuken's daughter appeared, pulling her cape and caressing her head, saying that she would become a very strong girl in the future. She also stated that when conflicts arise, war is not the only path. She could talk to people too, but the girl didn't understand anything and made a dumb face. The father said he had a great gift for his daughter. Then he gave her a small turtle, saying it was an ancient beast. The girl quickly fell in love with that little creature. She decided to name the turtle Bakia. Many years later, we go to an environment full of flames. The father was in the last 2 inn, ordering his daughter to use that item to summon the ancestral god. This was because the White Spirit sect had betrayed all the cultivators. Then he ordered his daughter to do this while transforming into a grand beast to fight the cultivators. The girl didn't understand why this was happening, while running through the forest crying. Why did humans have to be the traitors? This time everything was going well, everything was going right. Not far away, near a great monument, she saw her uncle, the White Emperor. She looked so small next to that goddess monument. While flying, the White Emperor channeled power through his fingers. That was the white cut and quickly destroyed the goddess statue. The great monument fell in front of the little girl and she collapsed to her knees because that was the hope to call the great goddess. He announced to his disciples that they should eliminate Shukupai and capture all the primordial beasts. From that moment, Shuken's daughter began to hate all humans. Returning to the present, the master was left speechless because the girl was raising her aura and hit him in the middle of his face. She was angry, remembering all the painful memories of her father. Ko was laughing because that was what the master wanted, this ancestral power. The girl walked with so much hatred, so much power spreading. She put her hand on her own chest and tore out a large piece of flesh. She also spat out several teeth. All were covered in blood that she absorbed. Several completely deformed monsters were born from this, and Hui could notice all the terrifying aura coming from these monsters. She also noticed that someone was trying to invade the vault, and the protagonist just gave a little smile, saying that they met again. And do you know who isn't smiling? It's me. Because I wanted to see more of this work and talk more about it with you. But as everything good lasts little, today we finish. So comment with me what you think about this work. Honestly, whenever I look at it, I only think about melons. As always, don't forget to like and leave a comment, that one comment. Also consider becoming a member here on the channel. After all, this helps us a lot to create even more content. I'll leave 2 very good recommendations to follow. That's it for today. See you in the next video, guys.